Okay, so the class I'll be sharing with everyone today is Beauty of Perennials, exploring the world of perennial plants, kind of talking about what a perennial plant is, because if you live in California, a perennial plant is going to be completely different than if you live in Oregon. I started out in California, moved to Oregon, and I realized just how big that difference was in such a small distance. So things like snapdragons that I used to grow, and they grow for 10, 12 years, no problem. Up here in Oregon, they're actually grown as an annual more often than not. You can transport the plants back and forth, which you really shouldn't be doing. But I've actually had snapdragons growing in my yard for about the last 6 years that were transported from California. So if they are more mature, they've been growing, they've been through that nice seasonal temperature. They can actually survive up here when they shouldn't because they're more established. They have better root systems. They've got the woody branches. They just really can't fully establish into adult plants here, which makes them an annual. So unveiling perennials. Perennials are kind of difficult to explain because a perennial in California is not a perennial in Oregon. It really depends on where you live. But a perennial is basically a plant that will survive year after year. It might die back to the ground in wintertime, but it's going to survive on its own root system. So it is technically the same plant. It is not dying back completely and reseeding. It is on the same root system and it comes back year after year. So perennials will regrow without planting. They are a huge group of plants. And like I said, some plants are perennial in some places, some plants are annual in other places. But our perennials here in Oregon in the Willamette Valley specifically include a wide array of plants, anything from small shrub-like perennials, flowers, grasses, herbs. You have things that will die back to the ground. You have things that are going to be semi or fully evergreen, woody, or herbaceous. Um, they offer a diverse array of characteristics. You may be going for color. You may be going for something that never dies back in the winter. You may be going for something that smells really nice. There's really a perennial for everybody out there. And they're a lot easier to really put into the landscape than your annuals because you don't have to replant them. There's a lot less maintenance that goes into them. So basic anatomy of a perennial, you have your root system, which may include fibrous roots or feeder roots, may include a taproot as well, which is much longer and deeper. But that root system is going to remain throughout the lifespan of the perennial. The crown is always going to be around as well. The stems and shoots, depending on which perennial you're dealing with, may or may not survive the winter. So herbaceous perennials or soft green perennials that are bendable throughout the year, they will die back all the way to the crown in winter and regrow on that same root system the following year. Semi-woody shrubs, say a lot of like your salvias and things, they'll grow nice and tall during the summertime. And then as soon as winter hits, you're going to hit back quite a bit of that branch structure, but you're not going to hit them back all the way when you prune them. Evergreen shrubs like your lavenders and your rosemaries, you don't actually have to really prune it all, and they'll keep all of their branches even through the winter time. Benefits of perennial plants, they require less maintenance, often less water than annuals. They have deeper root systems than annuals. Annuals, you're basically taking a baby plant and caring for it until it is an adolescent plant. Your perennials, you're caring for it until it is an adolescent plant, an adult plant, and then it can better take care of itself. So think about, would you like to raise a toddler every single year, or would you like to raise something that's eventually going to grow into an adult? So understanding long-lived plants is key to creating a sustainable and vibrant garden. You want to understand which plants are going to be drought tolerant, which plants are going to be deer tolerant. Is this plant actually going to thrive in the location I'd like it to? Certain plants have more intense root systems as well, so they're better for erosion control. Maybe you want to plant certain plants on a slope. Maybe you want to plant certain plants that are shorter rooted in an area that you can kind of take care of them a little bit better. Perennials can provide wonderful habitat for all sorts of pollinators. You'll see frogs and things really thriving and all these nice leafy greens, all sorts of just awesome life in your backyard. So that provides mental health for you, that provides enjoyment for you. The plants are happy, all the inhabitants are happy too. So it just kind of increases just general happiness for everyone in your yard. Essentials of care. Proper care is crucial for health and longevity of perennial plants. Understand placement. So if you have a rock garden, maybe don't put hydrangea in there. Hydrangeas require a whole lot of water. You might want to put that in kind of a more well irrigated spot. So you want to keep your succulents with your succulents generally. If you've got a succulent that'll handle more water, you can place it in something else, but know which plants need which care before you plan your garden out. The happiest plants are going to live in an environment that closely mimic their native homes. So if you don't know, like, well, what requirements does this plant have? It's kind of nice to know where that plant came from. So if you're looking at houseplants, for instance, say the coffee plant is commonly grown in Hawaii. And when you think about that, they thrive in Hawaii. They're easy to take care of there. It's one of the rainiest places on earth. So when you think about bringing a coffee plant into your home, well, hey, it's probably going to require a whole lot of water. So knowing where plants came from can kind of help you to tell how to take care of them as well. You can alter the plant's environment to an extent, but you have to also consider how much work do I really want to put into this? Do I want to just change the plant so it's just already a better environment for the plant? You can change your environment for your perennials by irrigating, by mulching, by using different soil amendments. So if you have a hydrangea and you want it to be a certain color, you change the acidity of the soil, you put different amendments into the soil. If you really just didn't care what the color was, pretty much any soil is happy for a hydrangea. So how much work you want to put into it is really a huge factor when you're choosing your perennials. One of our favorite things to say, you'll hear basically all of our employees saying this, right plant, right place. So if you have the right plant in the right place, it's going to be easy on you. It's going to be easy on the plant. You're not going to have to do a whole lot of manipulation. It's just going to be an easy plant that wants to survive in the place that you put it. Important to know how many hours of sun, part shade is, part sun is, that sort of thing. A lot of your tags are going to be pretty specific. So say a panicle hydrangea. Panicle hydrangeas really love the sun. So you really want at least 6 hours of full sun. Sun placement and timing makes a difference too. So if you're looking at a plant that likes part shade, well, what does that mean? If I get 4 hours or less of sun, that's usually part shade. But in the morning, the sun is nice and easy. It's gentle. It's warming everything up from the cool night. In the afternoon, it's been hot all day. The sun's beating down. You're going to get a lot more intense sunlight in the afternoon. So if you're looking at a part shade, part sun plant, chances are it's going to do best on either the east side or the northeast side because it's going to get all that morning sun and it's going to be shaded out by the afternoon when the sun gets to be the most intense, and then you'll avoid leaf burn. Zoning is important too. A lot of your plant tags are going to tell you which zone your plants will really prefer. We are in zone 8 here in the Willamette Valley. So anything in zone 8 is going to be going to do pretty well in our environment. Anything lower than that will handle colder temperatures. So if you see a plant tag with zone 4 on it, we're in zone 8. Zone 8 is not going to have any trouble at all. You can probably take that plant over to Bend and we'll still do okay because they're in zone 4. Certain plants in extremely high zones might not do so well here just because of moisture content. If you are looking at certain cacti and things, you may have fungal problems or something. So be kind of cautious if you're looking at really, really high zones, but anywhere from probably anything super, super low all the way up to zone about 10 will do pretty well around here. Sorry, zone 8. Zone 10 is where I come from. Don't plant zone 10 stuff, please. So planting facts, let's get off on a good foot. Again, right plant, right place. Make sure that the plant and the place you're going to put it are going to just work for the plant and for you. You don't want to be doing a whole bunch of extra work here. You want the plant to be doing the work for you. So when you're looking at design, odd numbers seem to attract the eye a little bit better. Power of three, usually very visually appealing. If you're looking at even numbers, it's like, oh yeah, there's a color blob over there. You're looking at odd numbers, it kind of draws the eye, like, hey, there's something off there. And then you can kind of really actually see the beauty of the landscape. So when possible, go for odd numbers, do 3, 5, 7, something like that. Color wheel is helpful, but get creative. If you want something that says, I like light blues and purples and whites, that's wonderful. If you want to say, just, I want to make a huge statement with this, do big contrasting colors and really make that landscape kind of shout at you. There really is no right or wrong answer when it comes to landscape design. There are just a couple of things to think about. Textures are a huge thing. So not only going for flower color, but going for leaf texture as well. If you'll notice in this picture, the grasses here that looks like they're irises, kind of small on my screen, they really bring out the texture and they draw your eye to different plants and kind of separates the landscape out a bit. So if you go for things that are more grassy and then you go for things that are more broadleaf, you're really going to change the texture of the landscape and draw the eye not just to the area, but to specific plants in the area. Sizing and tiering is really important too. A lot of people think like, oh, I've got a really small space. I can only do really tiny plants. Maybe put one really tall plant in back and do a couple of different tiers. You're going to actually make that small space look a lot bigger than it is. Flowers as well. You don't want to get everything flowering all at once. If you come into the garden center and you only buy flowering plants one day of the year, some of those plants are going to be long blooming and you're going to be really happy with it. But come to the garden center a couple of times throughout the year. Pick a couple things that are blooming in March, a couple things that are blooming in August, a couple of things that are blooming midsummer, and just have your landscape constantly changing. If everything's blooming all at the same time, it's lovely for a little while, but you really want things to kind of go out of bloom and come into bloom and kind of ebb and flow. So get a couple of things that are going to bloom right here and now, and a couple of things that are going to bloom right after and thereafter. So you keep a constantly changing, constantly interesting landscape. And having a couple of evergreen things that don't necessarily flower, not the end of the world either, because that's really going to help with your textures. So getting roots in the dirt, just basics on planting from pots. A lot of your pots are going to be in some pretty nice soil, so you can use that soil that you got with the pot, or you can just kind of gently squeeze and kind of bare root them and put your own soil in. Either one is fine, but digging the hole the proper dimensions is really important. Here in Oregon, where we usually get a lot of rain throughout the season, soil settles. So it's important that you only dig the hole about as deep as the root system already is, because it's going to settle and you're going to wind up drowning the crown otherwise. So dig the hole as deep as the pot already is, dig it about twice as wide as the pot. This gives the roots chance to grow outward first, get a nice dense base. And then by the time they've grown outward, they've gotten strong enough that they can actually penetrate through the hole that you dug into your native soil. Understand the soil that you have in your yard before you think about soil amendments. Most of us have pretty high clay soil, doesn't necessarily drain all that well. It's hard to dig. It's really hard in the summertime. It's really kind of a little clayey in the wintertime and very wet. So think about what you want to amend that soil with. Drainage is usually paramount. There are a couple things that do well in clay soil. If you're looking at natives and things, you can definitely find things like, oh yeah, just place it in clay soil, it's fine. Um, but when you're thinking about soil amendments, think about which plant you're grabbing and what that plant really wants. Compost. If you are potting in the ground versus in a pot, potting soils are going to be quite a bit different. In pots, I almost always just do regular potting soil. Regular potting soil doesn't have all the additives that most of your soil amendments do, but that also means you're not going to get weird fungal growths and things. In a pot, you are containing your environment. You are having control over what you put in and what you get out. The plant in the pot is usually an individual plant and it doesn't have access to all the plants around it that will help leach out anything that that individual plant doesn't want. So be careful if you're putting high nutrient things into that soil other than the fertilizers that you really want in there. You don't want weird molds or anything in your pots. Mulching, I have not actually gotten to this point yet. Mulching can be really important for a lot of your plants because it will keep the soil temperature cooler in the summertime and warmer in the wintertime. Also help to prevent a lot of weed growth in the area where you've planted. Do not put your mulch too close to the crown because while it does a really good job at insulating the soil, it can also crowd out your crown and actually rot the crown. So you want to give probably 2 or 3 inches on either side of the crown, just in a circle where there's no mulch at all, and that crown can really breathe and it can send up new shoots easily. About 1 inch thick is usually the kind of mulch that you want to do. You can use basically anything as a mulch too. Mulching is more of a verb than an actual noun, so it's not like I want some mulch. Everyone's gonna go, I don't know what that means. So you can use hemlock for mulch. It's really nice. It doesn't have a lot of splinters. It's easy to use. It's easy to remove too. You can use certain soil amendments as mulches. I actually really like to use our soil building conditioner as a mulch. It's beautiful. It lasts a long time. You can plow it directly into the soil when you're done because it does help break up your clay soils also. So it's kind of a multi-purpose thing. Some people like to use hazelnut shells also. Makes a great mulch, especially around like blueberries and things. But you got to be careful if you have squirrels because they do like to dig in it. Which is actually the opposite of cats. Hazelnut shells will prevent cats from digging around in your garden a lot of the time. They don't like how it feels on their paws, and so they won't. They've been doing it for years, and you've got a really determined cat, it won't stop them. But it is a deterrent, and it helps out my cat. Cat compost is a little bit hot for most garden beds. So if you're seeing nutrient burn and you've got a cat, you might know why. How to get roots in the dirt. We're still on this page. Forgive me, I'm going a little bit slow because I'm using a different program here. So watering and feeding. Perennials are all going to have different water needs. Like I said, perennial is just a huge blanket term for anything that'll grow back on the same root system. So that is anything from a succulent to a hydrangea to a coneflower. And certain things are extremely drought tolerant. Other things want a lot of water retention. So desert plant versus bog plants, basically. When you are watering, it's a good idea to do a nice, thorough, deep watering. You want to encourage the roots to grow down. If there's only water in the top 3 inches of soil, there's no point for the plant to grow roots. And then you wind up with a plant that has small, stunted roots and is easily killed over the winter when the colds come. So water deeply, water infrequently if you can. You want to keep the water concentrated at the root mass to prevent other weeds. If you've got a large garden bed like you see here in the photo, you've got a lot of open soil here. And you don't want to be watering the weeds. You just want to be watering around the collars of the plants. Usually you'll use a balanced granular fertilizer in spring, depending on what you're using it for. Maybe you'll use a starter if you're trying to get root systems going. Maybe you'll use a tomato and vegetable fertilizer for your garden beds. Maybe you'll use a rose and flower for your flower beds in the front yard. But the granular stuff is really nice in spring because this is a long-lasting, slow-release fertilizer. It'll last you for several weeks, and then you can supplement with liquid fertilizers if need be. Certain plants are much hungrier than other plants. So kind of get to know which plants do better with fertilizer, which plants don't really need it all that much. Root stimulator can be used when you plant, and it helps to reduce your transplant shock. It helps to increase the growth of your fibrous feeder roots. But you can also use it in the fall just to give your roots an extra boost before wintertime sets in, and that'll provide just a little bit of extra longevity for the plants and the more winter hardiness.
Would that be also good for fruit trees, the new fruit trees?
Yeah, the root stimulator is good for transplanting anything, especially large fruit trees and things.
Okay.
They usually have kind of small roots when they leave the building, so the root stimulator goes a long ways on them. Pruning and deadheading. It's a little bit different for each perennial you come across, but almost all perennials will benefit from pruning and deadheading. You're going to get denser bushes, you're going to get more reblooms, you're going to get just overall healthier plants when you prune and deadhead. Timing is paramount on actual pruning too. Certain perennials, you really want them to have a full dieback before you prune them. Certain things you want to prune later in the season so that you give habitat to certain native bees and things. I think we're going to get into this a little bit more, so let's go ahead and go on with the slides. So if you see in this photo here, we have an herbaceous perennial. So we're looking at like a bee balm or something like that, maybe a poppy or something. These are all herbaceous plants. You see just green stems that are really bendable popping up. And by the time they die, they're still green and bendable, but they're turning kind of brown or yellow, and they're just basically naturally senescing for the year. You'd cut those just 3 to 6 inches off the ground. You'll leave a little bit there just so you know the plant is there and you don't try and plant something on top of it. Your semi-woody plants, we're talking like salvias and things like that, things that are going to get quite a bit taller, things that can still grow leaves on those on those older branches. But you want to cut them back to the point that you're encouraging new growth and you're encouraging denser growth for the following year.
Where does clematis fall into that?
Clematis?
Yeah, to cut them back.
Clematis is an interesting one for pruning, and there's not actually a simple answer for it unless you know the exact species of clematis you have. Clematis have 3 different pruning groups, and depending on who you talk to, it's numbers or letters. I like to say A, B, and C. So some clematis you have to prune all the way back, and that's probably about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. Some clematis, it's optional. You can do that to promote better, denser growth, or you can let them grow and they'll actually grow on old woody stems also. There are a few clematis that only flower on new wood, and you can cut them back if they're looking awful, but you're going to skip an entire year's flowers before they regrow again. So important to know which clematis you have. It's not going to kill it pruning it, but you might actually accidentally prune off all the flowers if you have one from the never prune variety.
Okay, thanks.
So I talked about this a little bit a minute ago. Clean up any dead foliage, debris. You don't want a whole bunch of dead leaves down there that could encourage bugs and things that aren't so good for your plant. But you don't want to clean up everything. Spots in your yard that like, oh, well, it's just a little bit of grass. It's just a little bit of leaves over in the corner. It's nothing really that I need to protect. Leave that stuff alone. A little bit of leaf cover is a really good spot for like bumblebees and things to overwinter. So if you disturb that, there's a single queen from a bumblebee colony, and you'd be getting rid of an entire colony by cleaning that up. A little bit of mess is okay. You don't want certain dead debris in your garden though. So if you're looking at squash plants, for instance, squash plants have problems with powdery mildew. And as they begin to senesce, they start to turn just this interesting snowy color. You want to get rid of all those leaves because that will actually spread to the rest of the garden. Talked about mulching a little bit earlier. Purely compost, soil building conditioner, which is my favorite. Different types of bark mulch. Shredded leaves work as a mulch as well, as long as you don't have any disease in those leaves. So powdery mildew leaves, keep those out, that sort of thing. Straw and pine needles work. Pine needles, kind of an interesting thing. They will acidify the soil over very long periods of time. If you have a pine needle mulch for a season, you're not going to have to worry about, oh, well, it's going to kill my tomatoes. It doesn't set in the soil long enough to really do that. So pine needles are okay as long as you clear them away in the springtime too. Some of your tender perennials will survive most years. They're zoned for this zone, but on a really rough year, like when we have an ice storm or something, it could kill them. So if you have a perennial that's zoned like 8 or maybe 9, we can get away with 9s once in a while, but they might die if we have a particularly cold winter. You can cover them, you can mulch them, you can just get them a little bit of extra help through the winter, just to kind of make sure if we do have a freeze like that, they will come back the following year. Let's see, I think we mentioned, where did it go? Burlap and frost cloth is an option. I like to make a little hoop house over my garden every year. So all I use is I use a couple of pieces of staking, and then I'll put some 1/2 inch PVC pipe over the top of that, and then I use a 6 millimeter painter's cloth over the top of that. It works really well year after year. You just spray it off with hose, put it back over the top. The important part about hoop housing, though, is you have to realize that there are warm days in winter too. And if you leave that hoop house on there, it gets very, very hot and very, very humid. So you have to remember during the daytime it comes off. At night when it's cold, you put it back on. So I don't hoop house the entire winter. I'll only hoop house when I need it. Closer version of your herbaceous pruning. And this isn't necessarily just perennials that have long branches and things like this. This goes for almost all of your perennial grasses as well. You'll grab the entire tuft of grass and chop it probably 6 to 8 inches for grasses usually. Semi-woody. Be careful with true woodies. A lot of your true woody perennials don't really like to be pruned at all. You can actually get into a lot of trouble trying to prune lavenders. They don't like to be pruned very much. You can prune them a little bit, but you don't want to prune them too hard because you can actually do more damage to the plant than help.
With lavender, I was always told to like cut back like there's a.
You can
then
cut
there's
the
stems.
flower
I
shoots,
think
but you
that's-
shouldn't really cut back any of the actual woody
But the
growth.
flower shoots you cut.
Yep.
Off.
And the flower shoots, usually I don't actually prune with pruners. I'll just take my finger and my thumb and they snap really easy when they're ready to prune. So it actually goes quicker just with your hands. Pests and diseases. This can be difficult to identify, but it's better to treat for the proper thing. So try your best. We're going to get into the Venn diagram a little bit here in a second, and it'll be easier to see. It'll be a little bit bigger. So pests and diseases can affect perennial growth. They can also be a cause of the natural senescence of the perennial growth. So certain things, they just get pest problems every year, and it's just kind of to be expected. Who here grows lupins? I do. So lupins are one of those plants that it gets powdery mildew, it gets aphids, it's totally fine. It's just a natural part of the plant's progression. So I have my lupin kind of off in the corner. I have these big, beautiful blooms in the springtime. And then somewhere around when it starts to get pretty hot, the entire thing will just get powdery mildew and it'll get kind of wilty and it'll kind of fall down. It'll get some aphids. It's just a natural part of when it goes away. You can prune that away and toss it in the green waste bin, or you can just kind of watch it. As long as those pests don't jump onto your other plants, they're just helping that plant to naturally senesce so that it can die back to the crown and it can come back the following year. That being said, if you've got your lupin right next to a bunch of really tender perennials and you know, oh, this is really juicy for an aphid, maybe you should cut that back a little bit early before it really starts to naturally senesce. But you can basically timer watch to it. As soon as that lupin is done blooming, it's going to get powdery mildew and it's going to get aphids, and then you're going to throw it in the green waste. Wonderful plants, but you do have to do a little bit of chopping on them. Same goes for bee balm, actually, Monarda. When you chop them back, you know exactly when you have to do it because they all start getting powdery mildew problems. They're really dense, really nice plants, but you do have to chop them back. And a lot of times they'll regrow again before winter pops in. You get a second flower. Willamette Valley is extremely high moisture. So if you don't have pest problems, you probably have fungal problems. Especially with summer rains like we got in June, there are a lot of fungal problems out there. So it's important to keep up on your deadheading, keep up on your pruning. If you have dead foliage, that's just prime growth for fungal problems to set in. And then as fungal problems set in, they'll start to go down into the healthy tissue. So keep healthy material on the plant, chop off anything that isn't healthy here. Common pests that can attack perennials. Aphids are probably the most common thing you're going to see in the garden, followed by slugs. Spider mites are very common. Not a lot of people actually see spider mites because they're so small, but if you take a look at a leaf, you'll see evidence that they're there. You'll see a dusty leaf that just kind of collects all the dust. You'll see little bits of webbing here and there. Important to understand the difference between spider mites and actual spiders. So spiders, not a problem on your plant. Spider mites, definitely a problem, and you will see that dusty, sooty mold on there. Healthy plants will fight against pests. So if you're seeing pests on your plant, chances are it already has something going on with it. Maybe it's a watering issue, maybe it's a fertilizer issue, maybe it's a disease issue. So it's worth a closer look if you do see pests on your plant before you expect to see them. Neem is a really good defense against most of your pests. It will attack aphids, it will attack spider mites, it will attack all sorts of different things on your plant and kind of help keep it healthy. But you want to be very careful not to ever spray anything on any plant that has flowers on it, because the nature of most pollinators, they will pick up this neem or whatever you spray on your plants, take it back to the rest of the nest, and it has toxic effects. So if you have a plant that's struggling with aphids, say like a rose, really good example for aphid stress, you've got 2 or 3 flowers on the rose. Cool thing about roses, the more you deadhead, the more they flower. Cut off those flowers, spray the rose, and then await new growth. So you've taken care of your aphid problem, you've gotten rid of a few flowers, and you've actually encouraged new growth at the same time. So you're saving the pollinators that way, and you're treating the rose. Heat can also be a problem when you're trying to spray. So let's say you want to spray pyrethrin because you have a spider mite problem and it's really, really bad. If you spray that pyrethrin in the middle of the summer heat, you've gotten the leaves wet, you've attracted the sun, and basically it acts as a magnifying glass. You end up with a bunch of leaf burn, and you can actually do more harm than good by spraying the plant. So it's really important to spray either very early in the morning before the sun comes up so that you have dry leaves by the time the sun hits, or you can wait until the sun goes down in the evening and you can spray when you're not worried about leaf burn. Deer is a pretty common problem here in the Willamette Valley. I noticed that all of my deer handouts are gone. So deer are a big problem here. You want to pick out perennials that have really tough texture to their leaves, maybe a lot of hair to their leaves, smells as well. The deer are usually deterred by strong smells. Thinking about like lavenders, rosemaries, marigolds, that sort of thing. Certain garlics are really great too. So you're talking about deer. There are certain sprays that you can spray around the perimeter of your garden or perimeter of your plants. Most of them deal either with blood. Blood meal is probably the most effective organic fertilizer out there as far as nitrogen grows. So spraying with blood meal or fertilizing with blood meal is going to help the green growth of your plants, and it's also going to scare the deer away because they don't want anything to do with a predator. And if there's blood around, there's probably a predator around. It doesn't work super long term because with the application of water, the smell kind of goes away. So that's something that you would have to apply pretty frequently. Your liquid fence and most of your other deer deterrents deal with garlic and very, very strong smells that the deer just don't really like. I love garlic, but not everybody else.
You know, you mentioned lavender. I've got about 60 plants, and I found that when you plant the smaller plants, you need to check them daily. The deer won't eat them, but they will pull them up.
Gotcha.
I'll sometimes go out and there'll be 5 or 6 plants. Because I don't know if you're telling me to plant something I like or.
That's definitely a concern. So the question was, we had a large field of lavender, and the brand new plants are being browsed by the deer. They're not necessarily being eaten, but they're being ripped out of the soil. And that's a pretty common occurrence, especially for fawns. They don't know what to eat yet. They're going to rip something up and go, oh, that's disgusting. And they're going to throw it aside. I've heard of this happening with marigolds too. Deer hate marigolds, but they'll rip them out of the ground, throw them aside, and just kind of go to the gardener like, come on, let's do something else here. So it's important when you first plant new perennials, even if they are deer resistant, to protect them at least until they get to the point where they are established and they can handle a little bit of light pruning. They've got their roots kind of in the soil, they're beginning their good growth cycle, and they can handle a little bit of that. But deer fencing, liquid fence with garlic, blood meal, these can all kind of help to deter. I guess a good way of putting it is deer do not read our books. So this is an awesome little diagram. My coworker Angel uses this constantly, and I love looking at it. I see something new every time I do. There are a lot of things that pest diseases and environmental circumstances can just really look alike. So if you're seeing sad plants, they've got yellow, wilty leaves, there can be a variety of different causes for it. It might be a water thing, it might be a pest thing, it might be a disease thing. So take a good look at this diagram, and not everything is on here. This is just all that we can fit on there. There are so many different causes. So take pictures, examine tops and bottoms of leaves, look at stems, really get an idea of how fast this is happening to the plant. Is this happening to the plant just on the side where it gets the most sun? Is this happening on the side of the plant where it gets the least amount of wind? Is it really thick in one area? Just kind of get to know, like, why is this happening to my plant? Is it an airflow problem? Is it a pest problem? Am I accidentally spraying my sprinkler over here and it's getting leaf burn? There's all sorts of different things that can affect plants. And we can come back to this again as well. Practical benefits to incorporating perennials in a landscape design. So they do more for us than just looking pretty. I mentioned this a little bit in the beginning. It is great for our muscles. We're moving around, we're using different muscles, we're bending over and grabbing this, we're reaching here, we're pruning that. It's great gentle exercise for us. It's great for our brain, it's great for our senses. All sorts of good smells. We're eating half of the things that we're planting. So all around, it's a great thing for us. It's a great thing for the pollinators that choose to visit, all of our hummingbirds or butterflies. Some plants are going to be eaten by caterpillars, but if it's a monarch, maybe we're okay with it. So popular perennial varieties. We've gone through what is a perennial, how to take care of a perennial, how to prune a perennial. Now let's look at a couple of the cool perennials that we have. You can use the Plant Finder tool on our website to kind of do your own research. Cool thing about Plant Finder tool is it'll sort of weed out the things that aren't going to work in your garden. So you look at the Plant Finder tool and there's going to be all these little check boxes and go, all right, in my yard, I need drought tolerant plants. I want this color of plant and I get this much sunlight. And then you hit go and it filters out everything that does not fit those parameters. So it's a handy tool for finding different plants. It does not guarantee we have those plants. It's just a resource. So you can kind of narrow things down, give us a call, go, hey, I found this cool plant. It's in my zone. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Do you have something similar to it? And we can probably help you find something like that. But it's just really fun to use. So we usually have a couple of tables set up as displays for certain things. The deer resistant table is one of our most popular. First thing is nothing is deer proof. I know we talked about lavenders, we talked about marigolds, things that are supposedly extremely deer resistant doesn't mean the deer will not destroy them. They might not eat them, but they might still destroy them. Fawns are deer in training. They don't really know what's good, so they'll try everything. They learn the hard way every single time. So deer resistant does not mean fawn resistant. There is nothing that is fawn resistant. It doesn't exist. We recommend buying deer resistant varieties, but using deer deterrents for new plants as well. And I do have more handouts on the computer. I'd be happy to print more for anyone who's interested. So deer resistant qualities, we're looking for very strong smells on foliage. We're looking for hairy leaves. We're looking for textured leaves. Sometimes thorns will deter deer, sometimes they won't. So you think barberries, deer don't really bother barberries, but they love roses. So thorns do not necessarily make a plant deer resistant. Ability to take strong pruning, even if a deer loves the plant, if the deer can take a ton of different pruning, even if the deer browses on it a little bit, the plant will grow back, it'll get much thicker, much denser, and honestly, the deer can help with the plant. So strong pruning is something that you want to think about when you're looking at certain plants that would be in a deer-ridden area. I've got a question in chat from Susan. Can you give Zoom people a downloadable PDF? I can definitely send PDFs at the end of class. Go ahead and shoot me your email and I will send the PDF handouts to you. The class itself is going to be recorded and put on YouTube, so you can check that out next week. So one of my favorite deer resistant plants is also everything else resistant. So this just makes it an extremely easy keeper. The Russian sage or Perovskia is very, very drought tolerant, very, very deer tolerant. It is okay to be pruned. It gets huge. It's a wonderful pollinator plant. Looks great. It's super long blooming. There are a couple different kinds, so it can get usually from 2 feet to 4 feet, depending on variety. I have seen them 8 feet tall before. So depending on how long they've been in the ground, how well they're doing, this is a really, really great plant. Did you have the?
My sister that lives at Crooked River Ranch planted them and then roots spread everywhere. And
They can take over a bit.
Years and years.
So they will spread over time. Oh, look right there. Extensive root systems for erosion control. So it'll help keep the soil in place, but as long as you've got the space for the plant. So I should probably edit that to say low maintenance until you want to get rid of the plant.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we kind of say the same thing about bamboo is, oh yeah, there's no maintenance until you want to get rid of it. Then you need heavy machinery. So this is all in the eye of the beholder. Again, right plant, right place. So spurge or euphorbia. This is a wonderful coastal plant. It's very drought tolerant. It's very deer tolerant. I'd like to put these plants in here just because they kind of hit all the marks. There are many, many different colors and sizes. Anywhere from 2 to 5 feet, you might see a pure red one, a pure green one. You might see a rainbow colored one. These are really interesting plants because you can get so many different colors and sizes out of them. You can almost make an entire landscape out of nothing but euphorbia.
Are all the varieties perennials?
All the varieties that I know of euphorbia are perennials.
Okay.
All the varieties that we carry are hardy here.
Okay.
There may be varieties that we don't carry that are not hardy. But anything you see here at the garden center is hardy for our zone. So long-lasting flowers, they're very interesting flowers. Honestly, I think the foliage is more interesting than flowers, but the flowers themselves do attract quite a few pollinators and butterflies like these guys too. Baptisia. This is a really interesting one because it is so dense and it blooms so prolifically. It is quite adaptable, so it can handle quite a bit of water. It can handle not so much water, usually between 3 and 4 feet, depending on variety. The flowers are actually really good for cutting and drying, and because of the leaf structure, you don't see this all that often. You can really use it as a textural plant as well. Nitrogen fixing is another interesting one. So if you've got soil that just really needs some nitrogen, you've been dumping fertilizer on it forever, this plant will kind of help to improve your soil quality because it is a legume as well. So these are plants that will thrive in full sun. Somewhat relative term for our location. We are talking at least 6 hours of sun. We're looking at western exposure, southern exposure. So afternoon sun is totally fine. If you've got an area with a white wall or something, it just gets crazy, crazy amounts of sun. These are more resistant to leaf burn and they'll actually accept that full sun. But our full sun is not California full sun, so maybe don't plant these particular poppies in the middle of the sun in California. We usually give them a little bit more shade there. Things with yellow or thin foliage may be more susceptible to sun scald. So if you see a variety of Heliopsis, for instance, that has these crazy variegated leaves, they're beautiful yellow, maybe put them on the southern side instead of the western side. They are a little bit more susceptible to sun scald because the yellow is just not quite as strong. So poppies, these are all Icelandic poppies, but the California poppy falls into this category as well. Full sun is totally fine. They'll thrive in part sun as well. Extremely drought tolerant for California poppies. average to pretty drought tolerant for Icelandic poppies. California poppies are basically just weeds, so throw them in the ditch somewhere, they'll do fine. Just whatever you do, don't let your kids go out and spread all the seeds because you'll have nothing but California poppies.
I think that's probably why growing up, they used to tell us that it was illegal to pick them.
Yep, my parents too.
It's the state flower, it's illegal to pick them.
That's what my parents always said too. By the time we left our house, there was nothing but poppies. So there's a wide variety of color here. There's pinks, reds, oranges, there's different colored centers, there's full color flowers. They're a wonderful source of nectar and pollen. You'll see honeybees on here, you'll see bumblebees on here, you'll see all sorts of different native bees, you'll see butterflies and things. So this is a really good pollinator plant with great deer resistance too. Most of the leaves are really fuzzy and they don't have a great texture. You don't really want to put fuzzy things in your mouth usually. Deer don't either. These will go dormant in late summer, so they pair really well with your late summer bloomers and your early bloomers. Bee blossom, whirring butterflies. There's so many different names for this plant, but I like to just call it Gara. They are a nice dense plant down below, and they send up these nice huge flower spikes that are usually a little bit sparse, but they look kind of dainty. Pretty drought tolerant. They'll also handle quite a bit of watering if you want to put it in with other plants. So it's just an easy to use plant. Full sun to part sun, usually 18 to 24 inches with the flower spike included. Delicate looking upright growth. This is a wonderful pollinator plant. You'll see hummingbirds on here, butterflies on here, bees on here, and it just blooms all summer long. This is a really wonderful plant. It's great to use as a textural plant too, a good accent. So if you've got a lot of really dense growth in there with just kind of generic leaves, throw this in here and it just kind of, it lightens up the mood of any of the atmospheres you've got. And also used as a sidewalk border at sweet home. So if you go through and you see like, oh, what are all those gorgeous flowers? It might be the Gara here. Coneflower or echinacea. There are so many varieties of this plant. You'll probably never see them. Couple of cool things about the echinacea. They are fairly easy to propagate. They are very drought tolerant. They're you propagate them like hostas. Every now and then you've got this gigantic clump of coneflower and it's just getting way too big for your area. Dig the whole thing up, separate it out, put it in a couple different locations, and it'll be happier than it was before because now it's not quite so dense. So varieties of purple, pink, yellow, any color under the sun you can think of. Some are very small, some are very tall. Depending on the variety you get, you can take these and tier them. You can create an entire landscape out of these guys. Think about your texture for sure, but you've got color covered with the echinacea. And all parts of the flower are actually edible. Some people use the flower petals in tea. A lot of people will use the roots in tea as well. So when you're buying echinacea for like a cough or a cold or something, usually it's the root of the echinacea flower. Things that thrive in shade. You think about shady areas as usually kind of boring. There's a lot of really cool things that you can plant that'll give texture and color and just general interest to the area. Your shade plants usually want morning sun only. They need protection from afternoon sun. 2 hours is full shade, 2 to 4 hours is what we typically call a shade plant. Humidity and moisture is usually higher in these areas because the sun's not drying it out. So be cautious of fungal issues and you won't have to water quite as much in these areas. So your hellebore is kind of interesting. The water needs stay average to evenly moist, but these can actually tolerate quite a bit of drought. We had one accidentally growing in a pot with a manzanita one time. Did just fine for years. It was in mostly sun. This is just a really, really well adaptable plant. You can have it in just about anything. It'll do just fine. They are resistant to deer. They are resistant to sun, resistant to shade. Just a great all-around plant. And it's cool because it'll bloom in winter times. You usually see most hellebores blooming in February. So not a whole lot blooming in February, but you'll see all the hellebores just really taking the show here. They are fully evergreen. You might see them slim down a little bit. They'll lose a couple leaves, not be as full, but they don't ever actually die back all the way to the soil. They are.
I have those interplanted with my hostas and my front yard. And we do have deer in the neighborhood. They never bothered the hostas. I didn't know about deer ate hostas until
Interesting.
I was at another class. And
I've heard that they love the hostas, but I wonder if the hellebores are a turn. Yeah,
leave it alone.
the hellebores are actually toxic, so they learn pretty quickly that, oh, I should not eat that. But every kid's gotten a tummy ache from eating too much sugar, right? So deer and rabbit resistant, diverse foliage, diverse flowers, diverse heights. One of my favorite plants. The one concern with hellebores though is have some neem on hand because they do happen to have aphid problems certain times of year. So usually when they have aphid problems, they don't have any flowers. You don't have to worry about cutting flowers off. Give it a quick spray and then it's done for the rest of the year. So good thing to have on hand for hellebores, but they're super tolerant of just about everything. Brunnera. You can basically treat these the exact same way as hostas, but they have different textures. They have different colors. It's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but they're shiny. They look like someone sprinkled a bunch of glitter over them. So kind of an interesting plant there. They have really tiny, delicate flowers, kind of like forget-me-not. And sometimes the flowers will actually pop out before the leaves do. They'll go dormant in the wintertime, they'll flower right away in the spring, and then they'll pop out with this wonderful carpet of leaves. Moist to well-drained soil, just like your hostas. Let's see. Great pollinator plant for bees and butterflies, mostly just your really early ones, but they can bloom again. I prefer to mix these guys up with different textures because they have such unique foliage, but they do just fine on their own. So, coral bells or heuchera. When you go out and you look at all the heucheras that we have, you're like, is this really the same plant? There's so many different varieties. You have purple leaves, green leaves, red leaves, all these different colors and shapes and sizes. Sometimes you have really little leaves, sometimes you have huge leaves. They usually create this nice little mound when they grow. There are a couple of heucheras out there. Usually they're called forever species. So there's forever purple, for instance. They're actually evergreen. They'll lose some of their leaves, but they won't actually go fully dormant. The vast majority of heucheras will go fully dormant, but look for the forever tag and you've got an evergreen one. The flower spikes are good for pollinators, but not all pollinators. They have very, very small flowers. So it's kind of too small for something as large as a honeybee to get into, but you'll see all sorts of like native little sweat bees and things getting in there. So just good for the natives, really. Drought tolerant plants. We've got a lot of area around here that gets pretty hot and dry in the summertime, so good to know your options for drought tolerance. Let's see. Drought tolerant doesn't mean you pick it up as a baby plant, put it in the ground and never water it again. Drought tolerant plants are drought tolerant for different reasons. Your true succulents store a lot of water in their leaves, and they start out just being super drought tolerant. When you plant them, it's like, all right, give them a little bit of water, get them settled in, but they're pretty drought tolerant right from the get-go. Drought tolerant plants that are drought tolerant because of their root systems are going to need to be babied for a little while. So once we get into like your black-eyed Susan, for instance, as a baby plant, this is actually a really thirsty plant as its root system hasn't developed. Once you've had it for probably a year or two, it's developed, it's large, it's gotten to the point where it's really healthy. Those roots just go right down into the soil. They get nice and thick and they're able to sustain themselves with their extensive root systems. Great for drought tolerance once they're established, great for erosion control, but they need to be babied until they're able to actually grow that root system to the point that they can be drought tolerant. Cool. I think I finished that there. Black-eyed Susan are wonderful plants as long as you like to have a lot of black-eyed Susan in your yard. They will kind of take over. They do nice if you've got little borders or something to kind of keep them contained, but they'll spread a little bit throughout the seasons. They create this wonderful carpet of blooms. You can actually get a couple different colors here. And if you remember the echinacea that we talked about earlier, There's a new breed of plant called an echinacea, which is a cross between your rudbeckia and your echinacea. So you've got that huge flower, you've got the multicolored flower, but you've got the longevity and you've got the drought tolerance of the black-eyed Susan as well. So kind of a cool new variety that we have here at the garden center.
Does that new variety spread like the Black-eyed Susan?
I haven't actually planted the new variety. I've seen it in pots, but I haven't seen how it spreads yet. The coneflower is a lot more contained, so I'm hoping that they did breed it for just a little bit smaller area because the black-eyed Susan will continue to grow. Let's see. There are a couple different varieties, so if you want a tall variety versus a small variety, make sure to read the tag there. Lavenders are particularly drought tolerant to the point that they actually hate being watered in the summertime, and they will let you know about it if you give them too much water. Same with your rosemaries. Once you get them established, they need very little to no summer irrigation. Depending on variety too, it seems your English is a little bit more well behaved than your Spanish lavender.
What does that mean, below behaved?
They're just easier to care for. The Spanish lavenders have a way of just feeling like they're getting dried out in summer, but the moment you're like, oh, let me give you some water, help you along, you're like, no, 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 I wanted to do that. And then they get dry and brittle, and they aren't quite as adaptable as your typical English varieties. They can still do just fine, but if you mess up and you water it, they'll really scream at you.
You said that they'll let you know if you're getting too much water. Like what would you be looking for?
It honestly looks like they're not getting enough water when you water them too much. They'll start getting kind of brown and brittle, and they'll droop a little bit, and they'll just kind of look generally unhappy. And that's usually with more established plants too. Blanket flower, Gaillardia. It's a wonderful all-around flower, great for pollinators, blooms for a really long time. The only thing I would caution you about the Gaillardia is they have brittle stems, so just keep it away from walkways. Wonderful flower if you've got a nice long hose head. Pretty drought tolerant too once they're established. When they're in pots, you need to water them constantly. If you've got them in the ground, it's been in the ground for a couple of years, you're not really going to have to worry about it because it will have grown its roots and it will have been able to be comfortable in its area. Great for a cut flower. Just be careful when you're cutting the flowers because, like I said, it is brittle and you might accidentally knock a flower off that has not bloomed yet as well. The fuzzy hairs is what really makes it deer resistant. The leaves are fuzzy, the flowers are fuzzy, and the deer just kind of lick it and go, ugh, not for me. Pollinator plants. So getting into stuff that I'm really interested in here. Most of you probably know I'm the beekeeper here too. So this is kind of what I do is I go into the bees, I go into pollinator plants. I pay attention to which plants have the most visitations. So their pollinator plants are characterized by long bloom periods and bloom periods where there's not a whole lot else blooming in the environment. We call them nectar dearth periods. So nectar dearth is coming around right now when there's not a whole lot blooming. The summer heat has killed off a lot of the flowers. We're kind of waiting for something else to kind of fill in. So things like mints and things that are blooming right now really hard are really important pollinator plants, and they feed when not a whole lot else is blooming. Thinking about different pollinators, which pollinators are you hoping to attract to your garden? Hummingbirds are attracted to reds or really bright, vibrant colors. They also like a certain shape. Trumpet-shaped flowers are easy for them to get their beaks into and their long tongues. So long trumpet flowers, bright red colors, and you're going to get lots of hummingbirds. Butterflies are looking for good landing pads and large sources of nectar in small places. So flowers that have multiple florets on a single stem are going to be particularly attractive to butterflies. Bees see in the UV spectrum, so they're attracted to things you can't necessarily see. If you put a UV light over certain flowers, you'll see UV landing pads on some of them. So they're attracted to UV patterns. They're actually attracted to smell, which most pollinators aren't. So if you have really sweet smelling flowers, they're more likely to attract bees. Anything but red, really, they can't really see red. So anything that blooms in those periods where nothing else is really blooming, things that are very sweet. They'll basically go after anything that's large enough for them. I mentioned that the coral bellis heuchera had very small flowers. They usually don't go after something that has really, really tiny flowers. So your hyssop or your agastache. This is another great all-around plant. It's got a very strong, pungent smell to it. Personally, I like it because I don't have a very strong sense of smell. But different colors have slightly different smells to them. The orange is my favorite. So they're very deer resistant, extremely drought tolerant, to the point where they don't really like that much summer watering. I water mine a little bit because I throw it in with all the rest of my water loving perennials and it does fine. But this will handle, once it's established, almost no summer watering too. Good minty smell, lots of different colors. You can get pinks, reds, oranges. Wonderful pollinator plant here. You'll see hummingbirds on this, you'll see bees on this, a couple of butterflies, but they usually tend to after other things. We're getting to that slide next year. Joe Pieweed is a wonderful pollinator plant. It's also basically no maintenance. It likes a decent amount of water, but that's basically it. Different varieties. There are some miniatures and some regular size. 3 to 6 feet is pretty typical, and this is something that you'll chop back in the wintertime to about 4 inches off the ground. It is one of your nectar dearth plants, so it's going to be starting to bloom right around now. And it has an interesting variety of bees that visit it. You'll see early morning versus afternoon, different visitations. So you'll see the bumblebees on it hot and heavy in the morning. And then towards the later afternoon, you'll start seeing honeybees come in and they'll actually inhabit those flowers together and harvest together. And I've never seen a fight on these flowers because they are such a large nectar source. If you're swimming in an ocean of nectar, why would you fight something for it, right? Deer resistant too, which is really nice. Pair this with the early season bloomers because you've got your early season bloom fades. This plant doesn't even really start to grow until probably mid-spring, late spring. And then you'll start to grow its green growth out and it's going to start blooming right around now in mid to late July. So I moved this slide around because this covers multiple different things. We're about to get into native flowering plants as well. So the milkweed, Asclepias speciosa specifically, there's a lot of different milkweeds out there, but this one's Asclepias speciosa. This is a wonderful pollinator plant, and it is very specific to monarch butterfly larvae. Oregon native, wonderful pollinator plant, deer resistant. It basically kind of covers everything here. They're also fairly drought tolerant. They can handle some standing water, but in summertime, you're not really gonna have to worry about that. No, it actually skips this here, but we're going into the native plant section. Great commons, you see this all over the place. Large open meadows, full sun, they can handle part shade also. Average to wet soils are okay for these. And they're kind of like a set it and forget it plant. If you put it in the right place, it'll take care of itself. Most of your natives are this way. If you can mimic their native environment, which is basically all around us. Yes, certain ones want to grow in the mountains, certain ones want to grow in the bog, certain ones want to grow in the ditch. So right plant, right place. But if you get the right plant, right place with a native, it's basically no maintenance at all. You can see great comus starts in early season and in late summer. In the fall, we'll actually carry the bulbs as well. So depending on when you want to plant them, how you want to plant them, you can get them in different shapes and sizes.
What are the pink balls in the picture too?
This looks like a type of allium, actually. It's kind of blurry. It could be an allium or it could actually be a clover. Kind of hard to tell in that photo, actually.
I think it's thrift.
It could be sea thrift as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I grew them
There we go.
together, yeah.
So Armeria then. Cool thing about comus is it's actually salt tolerant too, so it'll also do quite well on the coast. Oregon sunshine or the fall sunflower. Full sun to part shade, extremely drought tolerant. Like most of your true sunflowers, throw it in the ditch, never water it, it's fine. Same with your California poppy. So this will bloom spring through fall, goes completely dormant in the winter time. You'll see lots of different butterfly and moth larvae on here. A good host plant and a good pest plant will coexist together. So if you see some caterpillars on it, most of the time it's going to feed off the leaves, but it's not going to completely decimate the plant because, well, if you eat the entire plate, there's nothing left to eat. If that makes sense. These plants can colonize, so be kind of careful. They will spread, kind of like your California poppies and things. Oh, there we go.
When those spread, are they by runners or are they easier to?
You're looking at seed spreading mostly.
Okay.
Spirea is one of my favorite native plants. It is easy to get a couple different sizes. They are extremely adaptable. Spirea douglasii, this is the one on the slide here, is a rather large plant, but you can also get Spirea densiflora, and densiflora, it's more dense, more of a 3-foot size. Spireas you see all the time out in the wild. They will handle being basically submerged in wintertime and then dry cracked soil in summertime. So if you've got a really difficult area, maybe full sun part shade, and it just gets flooded in the wintertime and it gets dry in the summertime, you can't plant anything there. Spirea is something that'll fill that gap. Blooms mid to late summer. This is a really great pollinator plant too. You'll see all kinds of butterflies and bees on this thing. It will send up just these huge shoots of flowers. And if you keep deadheading those flowers, you'll probably get a rebloom on this guy too. Spirea is another one of those things you want to be just kind of careful about with aphids. So having neem around can be really helpful with this guy. So moving forward, gardens aren't just beautiful and relaxing, they're functional ecosystems. They're great for the pollinators, they're great for erosion control, they're great for soil health. By planting a garden, you're actually really helping the local ecosystem and your own mental health. As gardeners, we have a responsibility to care for and protect your wildlife and your pollinators. Be careful when you're spraying things. Be vigilant that you're not spraying any flowers with something that can be taken back to a hive, or maybe a hummingbird will get some kind of a virus from it. You don't want to see hummingbirds with tongues sticking out. So let's continue cultivating gardens mindfully, creating spaces that are visually stunning, productive, and enriching for all of our inhabitants, not just ourselves. This is Anjali's contact information. She made the slides here. She's done a wonderful job. She's wonderful at answering any questions you may have. You can also ask any questions that you have of me. And instead of Anjali@chenards.com, you can reach me at Camille@chenards.com. And for those of you who are watching this, that is spelled CAMILLE@chenards.com. You can reach either of us at this phone number. And you can also come into the store and visit us and ask questions to your heart's content. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'd love to take any questions.
If I stuck something somewhere and I'm not happy with it, like, am I just
So,
moving things?
It depends on which plant you're trying to move. But most of your perennials, you can dig them up as long as you dig underneath the root system.
Okay.
And if you don't dig underneath the root system all the way and you're cutting off a little bit of roots, usually that's okay too. You can safely cut off about 10% of the root mass, and that just encourages to really put more effort into the root system. You want to transplant things and avoid the heat and avoid the extreme cold.
Okay.
So transplanting things in late fall is a great time to do it. They're kind of naturally senescing for the season. They're not putting a whole lot of effort into new green shoots. Be careful in springtime when they got a lot of new growth, because they're sending all their energy up, and that new growth isn't strong enough yet to really hold its own. So fall is a great time to transplant. Winter dormancy is a great time to transplant. You see a lot of our things in bare root. We just rip them out of the soil, say, hey, look, there's a whole bunch of roots. We hand it to you. The plant is completely dormant. All of its energy is in its root system, so you can safely transplant it.
Okay, so late fall, which.
and avoid extreme hot conditions or very cold. If you're trying to plant in the freezing ground, you simply can't dig, and it's too cold for the root system. If you can dig in the soil, bare rooting is fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.